everyone, it's Nicole and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing a tutorial of 8 square granny square hat. This is a cat ear style beanie hat. It is composed of 8 granny squares. It can be done in many different ways. I have a couple examples here. This shows the 2 color alternating round. This one is done with the neon stripes from Red Heart. They can also be done in solids. They can be done in multiples. It's really just limits to your imagination with color and what you want to do with it. Today we're going to be doing the tutorial in the Red Heart Super Stripes, and this is in the retro stripe color. In this tutorial we're going to go through on how I make the granny square for this so that we can keep the gaps in between each of the clusters at a minimum. I'm going to go over how I sew all of the squares together to get this nice seam in the middle. And then we're going to go around and stitch all 8 together and give it a nice finished edge. To make this hat, you're going to need 1 full skein of any type of yarn. For this, I'm going to be using a number 4 worsted weight yarn. And this is going to be 236 yards. This project does take an entire skein of yarn depending on your tension. You may have a little bit left over, but it does use pretty much the whole skein of yarn. I will be using a 5mm H clover hook. You will also need a pair of scissors and a darning needle. To start my granny square, I am going to use the magic ring or the magic circle. You don't have to. I just prefer to use this method when I make my hats. I feel that it gives that center circle a nice tight center, just to prevent the gapping. So I'm going to start my granny square using that magic circle. There are a lot of tutorials out there on YouTube. I don't feel that I'm the best at explaining it, so I'm going to have to defer you to one of those tutorials. Once you are set up to do the magic ring, I like to start each round with a stacked double crochet instead of doing a chain 2 or a chain 3. So to do a stacked double crochet, I have 1 loop on my hook. I'm going to go under, grab my yarn, pull it up. Now I have 2 loops. I am going to yarn over, pull through both loops. Now I have 1 loop on my hook. And if you look right here, there's 2 legs of this stitch. There's the first leg and a second leg. We're going to take our hook, we're going to go through this second leg of the stitch, grab our yarn, pull through just that leg. Now we're back to having 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And that is a stacked double crochet. From here, we're going to continue to work around our granny clusters like we would for a regular granny square. This is our first double crochet, so to complete our first granny cluster, we're going to do 2 more double crochet. So to do so, we're going to yarn over, insert in a circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's our second. And the final third is a yarn over, insert through the circle, yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And there's our first granny cluster. Doing this first stacked double crochet, creates this nice loop right here on top that makes it a lot easier to slip stitch into when we go to close this round. I think it gives it a nice cleaner look as opposed to doing a chain 3. So now that we have our first cluster, we need to create 3 more. So we're going to chain 1 in between each of our clusters. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That now gives us 3 more double crochet, which is another cluster, and we're going to separate our clusters by 1 chain 1. So now we have 2 granny clusters, and we're going to go ahead and do that 2 more times. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back up at the end. Okay, we're at the end, and you can see I have 4 clusters of 3, each separated with that chain 1 space. After your last cluster of 3, you want to make sure you have that chain 1 as well. I'm going to go ahead and pull and tighten up my magic circle, and then that first cluster that we made with that stacked double crochet, here's that top loop that makes it nice and easy to find, to insert our hook, to yarn over, and slip stitch closed. And that is our first round of our granny square. For the square, we're going to do 5 rounds. So for round 2, we're just going to start right where our hook is at. We left off right here in this chain space. So to start our round, we're going to start with a stacked double crochet. So with this loop on our hook, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to enter it right into this space right here. We're going to put our hook in this space, pull up the yarn, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 2. There's our 2 legs, 1 and 2. We're going to put our hook through that second leg, pull up a loop. Now we have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops. There's our first double crochet. To complete our first cluster, we're going to yarn over, go through that same hole, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 2. We need 1 more, so we're going to yarn over, insert our hook through that hole, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. This eventually is going to be a corner, but this is only going to be one side of that cluster. When we work our way back around, we'll finish this corner at the very end. So for right now, this is the first part of the corner. We're going to jump over it and work into this next chain space right here, and we're going to create a corner. Round 2 is nothing but creating corners right now. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And to complete our cluster, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. There's the first cluster of our corner. In the corners, we're going to chain 1 in between the clusters. That is the only time that we're going to chain anything in between any of the clusters from here on out, is if it is in the corner, and it is only going to be a chain 1 space. So we're going to go ahead and chain 1. And because it's a corner, we're going to work in this same space here. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that same open space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's our first double crochet in the next granny stitch. To complete this cluster, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And lastly, 1 more double crochet, pull up a loop, and now we have our cluster of 3. So here's your corner. So we have a cluster of 3, a chain 1 space, and a cluster of 3. Again, the corner is going to be the only time you're going to have that chain 1 space, which is right here. This is going to be the side of your square, and that is not going to have a chain one. So from here on out, when you're working your square, to keep those gaps and the spaces around at a minimum, your sides of your squares do not chain one in between the clusters. Your corners only chain one. So this corner is complete. We're going to go ahead and we're going to work another corner. Since this is the side of the square, we are not going to chain one in between. We have one more corner here. We're going to go ahead and create another corner. Remember, when you do your corners, to chain one in between those clusters and work both of your clusters into that same space. Okay, so we're up to that last, or we're up to where we started with that first cluster of 3. So we're going to go ahead and work another cluster into that same space. And after we have our cluster of 3, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch closed to the top of that stacked double crochet. And that will complete the second round of your square. As we grow the square, round 3 is going to be done the same way. Corners are going to be built the same way we just did the last round. Whenever we get to the sides of the square now, we're going to be placing one cluster in the side space. So to start round 3, we're going to start with our stacked double crochet, and we're going to start right here in this space where we're at. So we're going to pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, insert our hook into that second leg of the stitch, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Complete that cluster, yarn over, pull through loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And one more time, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now this is going to be the side of our square, so we're only going to put one cluster of 3 in here. So let's work just one normal granny cluster. Yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 1. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's number 2. And lastly, yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and we have our granny cluster. That's all we're going to do for our side clusters. And we're back to creating another corner. I'm going to go ahead and create my corner cluster here. Okay, corner cluster is complete. Don't forget to add in your chain 1 in between your clusters. And then we are back to on the side of the square. So we're going to enter one cluster into this chain space here. So 3 double crochet into that chain space. 2 and 3. So there is our cluster of 3. And now we're back to a corner. So we're going to create a corner here, which is going to be a cluster of 3. A chain 1, and another cluster of 3 in that same space. We're back to a side, so we're going to do just a cluster of 3. We're back to a corner, so we're going to do a cluster of 3, chain 1, and a cluster of 3 all in the same space. There's our cluster of 3, our chain 1, and another cluster of 3. We're back to a side, so we're going to do a cluster of 3, and we're going to complete the corner that we started in, and to do that we're going to do a cluster of 3, a chain 1, and slip stitch to the top of that stacked double crochet. And if you need to, pull that center tight as you go. And we have round 3 of our square complete. We need to do this 2 more times. So for round 4, just like we started the last 2, we're going to work right into this chain 1 space with a stacked double crochet. So insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, working in that second leg of the stitch, yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. 2 more double crochet to complete that cluster. And then that's half of our first corner. This time we have 2 clusters on the side of our square. So we're going to do a cluster of 3 here and a cluster of 3 here. So in this first space, let's do a cluster of 3. That's 1, and then a cluster of 3 here. And 2. We're at a corner, and we know corners are a cluster of 3, chain 1, and a cluster of 3 all in that space. Chain 1, cluster of 3. We're at another side, so we're going to do a cluster of 3 here and a cluster of 3 here. There's our first cluster of 3. And the second cluster of 3. We're at a corner space, so we're going to do a cluster of 3, chain 1, and a cluster of 3. There's our cluster of 3, chain 1, and a cluster of 3. We're back to another side, so we're going to do cluster of 3, cluster of 3. Back to a corner, cluster of 3, chain 1, cluster of 3, all in this space. And the last side of this round, cluster of 3 and a cluster of 3. And we're back to our corner that we started, and to complete that corner, we're going to do a cluster of 3, a chain 1, and then we're going to slip stitch to the top of that stacked double crochet. And that completes round 4. We need to do one more round, and then we'll be ready to sew in our ends, and then we can go ahead and seam together our pieces. All right, to start our last round, same like all the others, we're going to start with a stacked double crochet right in this same chain 1 space. Insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That second leg of the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. This time on the sides, we have 3 clusters. So we're going to do a cluster here, here, and here this time. That's 1. That's another. And the third. Completes the side. We're at a corner, so we're going to do a cluster of 3. Chain 1, cluster of 3. We're at another side, so cluster, cluster, and a cluster. We're at a corner, so we're going to do a cluster of 3. Chain 1 and a cluster of 3. Another side, so 3 clusters. We're at a corner, so cluster of 3. Chain 1, cluster of 3. And the last side of the square, do a cluster of 3, cluster of 3, a cluster of 3, and lastly, to close off this final corner, a cluster of 3, chain 1, and slip stitch to the top of that stacked double crochet. And that completes the 5-round granny square. To fasten off, yarn over. I cut a short end for weaving in. You don't really need too much, and pull through and tighten it up. Okay, we're going to turn our square over. We're going to go ahead and sew in our ends. It's nice when we do an either solid or an ombre yarn. We only have 2 ends to weave in. So in the center, I like to go around my circle 1 full time. And then I actually like to go back about a half turn the opposite direction. So then I'll go over 1 or 2 stitches and then I'll go back the other way. And then for this front corner one, I like to go through this stitch here underneath the top of this stacked double crochet. I like to pull it through this way and then take it behind and work under those stitches. That hides it pretty well. And then I'll come back through and go back this way a little bit. And that seems to hide it. And then this little bump here, that's all going to get hidden once we get in and start sewing everything together. There we go. Once all 8 squares are done and fastened in, you will need 8 of them to complete the hat, especially when it is with the variegated or ombre yarns. Whenever it is the 2-color yarns, I don't worry about this, obviously, because you don't have to, but when it is the ombre yarns like this one, what I like to do is lay my squares out and pick a pattern that looks good visually. I don't want all of my blue and green squares to be on one side and all of my pink and orange squares to be on another. So I will mix them up in a way and arrange them so that I have, say, a blue and a pink on the top of one side, and say a green, and this one looks pretty even ombre. We'll pick that one to go on this side. So this will be the 2 tops, the top of one side, the top of another side. These 2 squares are very similar. These 2 are pretty similar. Those 2 are, I'm gonna pull this one and switch it to this side. It's just a matter of personal preference. There's no right or wrong reason at this point. Just know that when you're lining up your bottom squares, which are these 2 and these 2, if you fold up the brim of your hat, for example, on this one, if you fold up the brim of your hat, you're really not gonna see those bottom squares anyways. Your hat, you're gonna see the top here and here. So that's why I put the main focus in my best 4 squares on the tops. So when I lay this out, my top 4 favorites usually end up somewhere at the top up there. So now this I know is one half of my hat and this is the other half of my hat. So what I like to do is I will lay these one on top of another like this and like this. This will help me when I go to seam, because now I'm going to seam right up the middle here. That'll be one side. And then this is where I will start seaming this side. To seam together our first side, we're going to start by creating a slip knot on our hook. And we're gonna start with the bottom 2 squares. Doesn't matter which side we're working with, we're gonna work with them independently before we join them together. So the bottom 2 squares of whichever side you're working with, we're gonna start with whatever the middle seam is going to be. So for me, that is gonna be these 2 squares, and I'm gonna look at the bottom corner. So if you remember, in the corners, we did a cluster of 3, a chain 1, and a cluster of 3. When I do the bottom and the tops, I don't start in this chain 1 space. I feel if you do that, when you create this bottom piece, it leaves this V. And personally, I'm not a fan of that. I like a more straight, seamless look. So in order to do that, I will actually pick up the 1 2/3 stitch of that granny cluster. So I'm going to grab in this 3rd cluster the front loop of this stitch and the back loop of this stitch. And I'm going to create a slip stitch by yarning over and pulling through both of those and the loop on my hook. And then from there, we're going to grab the chain 1 space. So we're going to insert our hook in that chain 1 space from the front square, the chain 1 space in the back square, yarn over, slip stitch through all 3. Now that is what we're going to do the whole way up this side. We're going to grab the front loop of the square in front of you and the back loop of the square behind. When you do this, you want to make sure that you're working with the same granny cluster on the front as you are the back. So for this front square, we're going to grab the front stitch of this first cluster, which means we want to grab the back stitch here of that first cluster. Yarn over, pull through all 3. And we'll move on to the second stitch. Front stitch, back stitch, yarn over, pull through all 3. And then that should leave us with the last stitch of the first cluster and the last stitch of the second cluster, and pull through all 3. And we're going to go ahead and do that the whole way down, and I'll meet you down here at the end. At the end, we're going to grab that corner chain 1 space here and here, slip stitch, and then we're going to bring in our next set of squares. In this center spot, I do not work into this extra cluster, this next cluster. I only go to that center chain 1 space. I only work in the next cluster on the bottom and the top. So to bring in the next set of squares, we're going to work in that chain 1 space here, and that chain 1 stitch here. Yarn over, pull through all 3, and that will hold those together. And then we're going to work this just like we did on the last square. Grab the front loop here and the back loop here. And because we're at the top, I'm going to go ahead and grab the loop to that first double crochet here and the back loop of this cluster here. And then to finish, we're going to yarn over and we're going to fasten off. That is one seam down the center finished. Doing the slip stitch of front loop on the front, back loop on the back square gives this really nice seam here, and it gives, you can see there, it gives your square a nice clean border on both sides, and I think that's just a really nice finishing touch. Okay, so now we have that opened up, we have our vertical seam done. We're going to go ahead and repeat the same thing with the horizontal seam. So we're going to fold it the opposite direction, and we're going to do the same exact thing that we just did, working the opposite way. So I'm going to create a slip knot, put it on my hook, and because this is a side, we're going to grab, there's our chain space, we're going to grab the front loop of that first double crochet cluster, and in the back square, 1, 2, 3, we're going to grab that first double crochet cluster and slip stitch through all 3. And then we're going to pick up that corner chain 1 space, oops, and the corner chain 1 space and slip stitch through all 3. And then we're going to go ahead and slip stitch again, front loop of the front square, back loop of the back square, making sure that you are grabbing from the same stitch on both squares so that all of your counts come out even the whole way across. And I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I will meet you here in the middle to show you how we do that. Okay, in this, as we approach this center seam, you want to make sure with this cluster of 3 that you are grabbing all 3 stitches of this cluster. So here's the first one, the second, and this third one can be a little tight, but it is in there. Make sure you grab it. You already have that chain 1 space from the previous round, so you don't have to worry about it. So from there, we are just going to skip right over that seam, and we're going to look for our next 3 clusters of 3 on this side. So here is the first one here, and the first one right there. And we're just going to keep on going like we have been. And because this is the top, we're going to grab the front of the first of this cluster of 3 and the back of this cluster of 3, slip stitch, chain 1, and fasten off. And there is the first side of your hat. I'm going to go ahead and weave in these ends I'm just going to go ahead and take this and weave this up through, grabbing a couple of the loops here. I like just to do it 3 or 4 times. And that's it. We'll do that to all 4 sides. Once those are all even in, trim off of the loose ends. And then the first side of your hat is officially complete. And you can go ahead and do side 2. I'm going to go ahead and do that with these, and I will catch back up with you, and we will then finish up the last part of our hat, and then we'll be all done. Both sides of our hat are done, and we are ready to seam it together, finish it off, and wrap it up. Okay, to do this, we're going to go ahead and put the top squares up at the top of our projects, and then we are going to lay them facing together. So face up, face down. Now, these 2 squares at the top, these are my top squares that I want facing. So that means this is my bottom. So this is going to be where the opening is to my hat. So that means I'm going to have to seam starting at this corner, up, across, and down. So this will be the bottom where the opening of my hat is. So we're going to seam these 3 sides just like we seamed these pieces here together. So I am going to rotate my work, and then we are going to start with putting a slip knot on our hook. And then we're going to start in this top right corner. I will do this corner just like I did on these sides. I'm going to start by finding that chain 1 space, but then I also like to work in that first leg of this granny cluster. So I'm going to grab the front loop of this cluster and then find that chain 1 space on your back panel, and then I'm going to work in this back stitch of that cluster, and we're going to do a slip stitch. And then we're going to keep working just like we did before. We're going to find that chain 1 space, slip stitch, and then the same thing, front loop of the front square, back loop of the back square. So front loop, back loop, slip stitch, front loop, back loop, slip stitch. We're going to do that the whole way across, and I will meet you when we get here. Okay, so I got the first cluster. Okay, here's the second double crochet. And then the third double crochet you can see is this one here and this one here. So we'll slip stitch with those 2. And then when you start on this next side, it is this stitch and this stitch. And we'll slip stitch those together. And then you'll start in that second double crochet there, and then the third. And it looks like that. Okay, in this corner, we're going to grab our chain 1 space, rotate, and we're just going to keep on working. We're not going to add any extra stitches in. We're just going to start by working in that next cluster of 3. Okay, so we're approaching that center seam again. And we're going to do the same thing just like on this side. We're going to grab this stitch and this stitch and do a slip stitch. So this stitch and do a slip stitch. And then just keep on working like we have been. Okay, as we approach this corner, we're going to grab the chain 1 space on both sides, slip stitch, turn, and just keep on working down the other side. Coming up again here on the center, it'll be this stitch with this stitch, and then this with this stitch. Okay, and then we are coming up on the very end of our 3rd side. So we're going to grab our corner spaces and slip stitch, and then we're also going to grab that first of the double crochet in that other cluster of 3 and slip stitch there. And I'm going to pull up a loop here for a second because I would like to show you something. So see how these are curling right here? That is normal. When we go to turn this right side out, that will actually help us because that'll keep the corners of your hat more defined and give it that more cat hat look. For your slip stitches, if you see that your hat right here is really bowing inwards like this on both sides, and looks maybe something like this, and maybe even up here like this, that means your slip stitches are very tight and you might want to loosen up your stitch or size up your hook. When you do your slip stitch rounds, they should be fairly straight. It's going to be indented a little bit here just because that's where this seam is, but it should be fairly straight edges as you go. But if you see that start to pull here in the center or pull at the top, your slip stitches are pretty tight. So maybe try to loosen up your stitches a little bit or size up your hook one. Either way should help a bit. Now from here, we have all 3 sides seamed. Before I turn this right side out, I like to go ahead and weave in this end. It just makes it a little bit easier whenever we do the last round of our hat. I'm gonna go ahead and just do this right up the side like we did the others. Just a couple stitches. And then we'll go ahead and cut that tail off. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this right side out. Pop the corners out of the hat. And there you can see your corners are nice. It creates that nice point. Your edges have that really nice crisp lined seam. And then lastly, what we're gonna do is around this bottom part, to give this bottom piece a nice finished look, we're gonna do a single crochet around the bottom. So I'm gonna find my loop, insert my hook, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do a single crochet border around the whole outside of the edge. Now this first stitch, make sure you grab both of those loops and do a single crochet. So enter underneath both of those loops, grab your yarn, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both. And we're gonna do this the whole way around the edge of the hat, and I will meet you back at the beginning. Okay, I'm coming up on a seam. Just want to show you how I take care of this. Just make sure that when you do this, you grab both this loop and this loop and do a single crochet around both. And then on this side, you can see here's my cluster of 3. There's one loop, there's a loop, and here's a loop here. So you want to make sure that you're grabbing both of those loops to do your single crochet. That'll help keep that edge nice and flat. And then we're just going to go ahead and slip stitch that closed. I like to chain 1 just to make sure that it's secure. Cut off an end long enough to leave a tail to weave in your end. And then I will come in here, go underneath that stitch, flip it over, work through here, and then I'll work up the side of my chain, or the side of my seam. And since this is the very last on the edging, and sometimes the edging of the hat gets the most wear and tear, I'll actually go back down as well, just to give it a little bit more stability. Okay, so to add one last finishing touch to my hat, I like to add a branding tag to mine. I get my tags made from Birch and Cider on Etsy. I will put a link to the shop down below. I get them in white, gray, black, brown. This one is more of a summer coloring hat. They are double-sided, so whether you wear it this way or this way, the branding is still there. And that finishes our 8 square granny square hat. I hope this tutorial has helped you. If you are new to my channel, I would really appreciate that subscribe, and until next time, we'll see you soon.